Adapting your board to the digital age. CEDEX is a company that has been active for a long time, but the last few years, CEDEX has to contend with a new problem. Like many others, the directors of companies just can't keep up with the changing technology, emerging risks, and new competitors. The board of a company is the governing body. Its members are elected and have decision-making authority. They basically oversee all the activities of a company. Nowadays, board members need better knowledge about the technology environment and faster, more effective ways to engage the organization. The seasoned directors of CEDEX feel outmatched and overwhelmed by this new class of problems. Luckily, there are few ways that will boost the odds that their board will provide the digital engagement the company so badly needs. The 4 guiding principles that will get their board back in the game are: closing the insight gap, understand how digital can upend business models, engage more frequently and deeply on strategy and risk. Lastly, fine-tune the onboarding and fit of digital directors. Number 1. Close the insights gap. To have more meaningful digital conversations, CEDEX has to recruit digital directors. Sounds easy, but the real problem is that digitalization is so far-reaching that it requires multiple digital directors to gather all this knowledge, and there just aren't enough of them to go around. To find the director CEDEX needs, the company can create a matrix of the customer, the market, and digital skills that it feels are required to run the company over the next few years. By doing this, they are basically cutting away the knowledge they don't need, which results in identification of the right new board members. CEDEX now has the appropriate digital directors, but to ensure their future even more, they could also build up a technology committee where they discuss technology topics. Only 5% of the boards have it, but that number is likely to grow considerably as it seems very effective. Now we have come to the second principle, which can lead to better digital engagement within. Understand how digital can upend its business models. CEDEX's business model is being pressured, but its board doesn't understand the sources of this pressure. What should CEDEX do? As an example, let's take the design of CEDEX's human-centered experiences. CEDEX's board members don't spend enough time exploring and monitoring these experiences. There are several ways for CEDEX to solve this problem. The first way is by kicking the tires. This means that CEDEX could, as an example, put beta versions of new apps available to customers, and so its board members gain hands-on insights and management get well-informed feedback. CEDEX board members should also push executives to explore and describe the organization's stock of digital assets. Companies that best capture, process, and apply those insights stand to gain a competitive advantage. On the other hand, digitalization makes CEDEX's office holders risk losing their job to new players coming from adjacent sectors that use cheap, scalable automation and new lightweight IT architectures. But how to avoid this? CEDEX needs to beef up its own direct e-commerce sales capabilities. An example, CEDEX could make sure that its directors are efficiently generating as much value as possible. By accepting these principles, CEDEX is on a good way to have an efficient digital engagement. However, there is more. These days, discussions concerning strategy require different rhythm, one that matches the quickening pace of disruption. For example, one major cyber attack can erase a third of a company share value in one day. Because of this, 1 or 2 meetings a year to review the strategy doesn't work anymore. And so we arrive to the third principle. Engage more frequently and deeply on strategy and risks. But how? Firstly, the tight loose structure. The name says it all. Blend your formal meetings and management reports with informal methods. This is Mr. Smith, but you can call him Mark. He's the CEO of CEDEX and wants to work in tag teams. These are small teams with particular function in which directors work with a business leader with whom they have a natural affinity in business background and interests. This helps the team to understand events at ground level, understand how the cultural and operational style evolve in the digital world, generate a better board level visibility, create more solid footing in communicating. A second change might be boardroom dialogue and risk discussions. It is important for CEDIX to encourage shifting boardroom dialogue about management questions and risk discussions. Why? This can clarify what kind of cultural change is required, but can also instill a sense of urgency with managers. And lastly, the use of robust tech tools. These tools can be important and useful to confront marketplace risks. Now CEDIX is almost there, but there's one last important principle to introduce in the company. Fine-tune the onboarding and fit of digital directors. A successful CEO from a digitally native company as new digital director rarely pays off. Several conditions must be fulfilled for someone to be successful as a digital director. For example, let's check if Alice is capable of being a digital director at CEDIX. Alice is a young digital director that grew up in quite a different organizational culture and hasn't had much experience. But to ensure a good fit, the board first must go beyond background and skills to encompass temperament and ability to commit time. Furthermore, she must be able to influence change within the culture of the board and play well with others. And if, lastly, her and the existing director's digital competences fit the emerging strategies, we could say that she can handle the position of the digital director. Even if she can't commit to a directorship or doesn't meet all board requirements, an advisory role can still provide valuable access to specialized expertise. After signing the contract, it is key to bridge the digital traditional gap. With an adapted onboarding process, her induction will lead to an effective new board participant from the start. So, now that CEDIX is following the approaches we outlined, closing the inside gap, understanding how digital can append business models, engaging more frequently and deeply on strategy and risk, and fine-tuning the onboarding and fit of digital directors, its directors surely will have even more burdens. However, the speed of digital progress confronting companies has yet to slow down, and CEDIX is now ready to accept this challenge. Its board is determined to engage executives more frequently, knowledgeably, and persuasively on the issues that matter most. Now finally, to conclude this video, we would like to share some critical reflections. Firstly, the paper doesn't really mention anything about the size of companies. We think that a larger company might have quite some trouble implementing these guidelines in comparison to a much smaller company. Secondly, the paper focuses on how to make sure a firm operates properly, but it doesn't mention anything about the working place. Placing the extra burdens on the already stretched directors could mean asking too much of them. At last, for some companies it may be hard implementing these guidelines as they might not have the financial resources. Well, that was all. We thank you for your attention.